What if a platoon of modern T-90M tanks suddenly found itself in ancient Rome? Not a museum, not a reconstruction, the real Rome of Julius Caesar's time. Tens of thousands of legionnaires, war elephants, siege towers, and the complete certainty of being the greatest army in the world. Against them, only a few 21st century machines. No air support. No infantry. Only tanks, crews, and limited ammunition. Today, we will see two eras collide. And it will become clear, numbers don't equal victory. A T-90M Platoon isn't just a single vehicle. Typically, it's 3 or 4 tanks, united into a single combat unit. Each weighs over 46 tons and is equipped with a 125mm cannon, thermal imagers, explosive reactive armor, and an automatic loader. The crew consists of only 3 men. Against them are some 40,000 of Caesar's legionaries, heavy infantry, auxiliary troops, cavalry, and missile launchers. The Romans were accustomed to overwhelming numbers, formation, and discipline. But they had never seen war at such a speed. The clash takes place on the outskirts of Rome. Wide plains, roads, aqueducts, and legionary camps. Tanks appear suddenly, the roar of engines, clouds of smoke, metallic silhouettes. To the Romans, they look like living monsters. Horses panic, soldiers falter. Centurions shout commands, trying to maintain formation. Caesar orders no retreat. He is certain that everything can be conquered with discipline and courage. He doesn't yet know that these machines fear neither spears, nor arrows, nor bravery. The first attack is a reconnaissance in force. The tanks advance in a wedge formation, slowly, keeping their distance. The legionaries form a classic formation, shields forward, pila ready to throw. On command, thousands of spears rise into the air. They strike the armor, break, and bounce off, causing almost no damage. At that moment, the crews realize the armor holds. The Romans, however, see that their best weapon is useless. Fear begins to spread faster than any orders. Return fire follows instantly. One shot, and an entire maniple disappears in a cloud of fire, dust, and bodies. The shockwave knocks soldiers off their feet, tears shields, breaks bones. This doesn't look like a catapult or a ballista. It looks like the wrath of the gods. The legionaries standing further back see only a flash and the void where their comrades once stood. The centurions try to restore order, but each new shot further disrupts the formation. Caesar quickly adapts. He orders the tanks to disperse and surround them. Thousands of soldiers run from all directions, trying to get closer. It seems that sheer numbers are about to make a difference. But the tanks increase their speed, exploiting their maneuverability. Machine guns begin firing non-stop. Bursts of fire mow down the infantry, preventing them from getting any closer. Where the Romans were accustomed to fighting at arm's length, death now comes hundreds of meters away. The Romans bring in their siege engines. The ballistas turn and begin firing heavy bolts. Some hit the tanks, leaving dents, sparks, and the screeching of metal. The crews feel the impacts, but there are no penetrations. However, return fire reduces the ballistas to rubble. Wood, ropes, crews, everything shatters in seconds. Caesar understands, the long-range battle is lost. He relies on cavalry and orders attacks from the flanks. The cavalry charges. Hundreds of horsemen accelerate, kicking up dust, hoping to outflank the tanks. But thermal imagers detect them long before they close. The tanks slew their turrets almost simultaneously. A few shots, and the cavalry vanishes as if they had never been there. Horses fall, men fly to the sides. The remnants of the detachment turn in panic and flee. At this point, it becomes clear, even the most mobile Roman forces are powerless against modern technology. However, tanks have a weak point: ammunition. Every shot counts. The crews understand that if the battle drags on, they will run out of shells. So they change tactics. The tanks begin to move in an arc, striking dense concentrations of troops, avoiding senseless fire. The Romans, on the contrary, huddle ever closer together, trying to find some kind of protection. This only makes the tanks' job easier, turning the battlefield into a zone of total destruction. Several hours pass. The field before Rome is covered in smoke, shattered shields, and the bodies of soldiers. But the legions are still numerous. Caesar gives a desperate order: ram them, at any cost. Thousands of men rush forward, hoping to climb onto the vehicles, blind them, and destroy them. Some manage to get close. They strike the armor with their swords, trying to climb on top. But the tanks begin to move, throwing off their men, and machine guns finish off the rest. At one point, the Romans almost manage to damage a tank. Several dozen soldiers surround the tank, blocking its view. The crew loses its bearings for seconds. But a nearby T-90M instantly covers its comrade, clearing the area with fire. This demonstrates a key advantage: coordination and communication. The tanks act as a single organism. The legions have no radio, no instantaneous transmission of information. Caesar's every order is delayed, and in this battle, timing is everything. By evening, it becomes clear, Rome is losing its army. Of 40,000 legionaries, only fragments remain combat-ready. Panic turns into flight. The discipline for which Rome was renowned breaks under the pressure of an unknown weapon. Even the most steadfast veterans understand, this is not an enemy that can be defeated by bravery. The tanks continue to advance, methodically, calmly. Every shot is a death sentence. Every meter is a step toward the very heart of Rome. Julius Caesar watches from a hill. He sees his greatest force crumbling. He understands, if these machines reach the city, Rome will fall. But even retreat is no help. The tanks have already changed the course of history. For the first time in centuries, Rome is not the master of the war. The final question remains, will a few tanks be able to take the city itself, or will numbers and the walls ultimately stop them? The answer lies in the sequel. Night does not stop tanks. Rome never prepared for this type of night battle. The legionnaires are accustomed to resting, regrouping, and waiting for dawn. But the machines do not tire. They slowly approach the city, destroying the last barriers. Every shot echoes off the walls, causing panic among the citizens. For the first time in centuries, Rome hears the sound of war that cannot be ignored. The city gates close. Thousands of soldiers, throwing machines, and stockpiles of stones and tar line the walls. The Romans rely on the height and thickness of the walls. But the tanks do not assault directly. They begin methodically pounding the fortifications from a distance. Morale falls rapidly, faster than the walls. The Romans try to use the narrow streets as traps. They hope the vehicles will get stuck, losing maneuverability. The tanks enter cautiously, blocking intersections, shooting through passages. Machine guns turn the streets into corridors of death. Any attempt to close in ends instantly. Stones thrown from above merely scratch the armor. The tar ignites, but the defenses cope. A city built for people proves useless against technology not designed for this era. Ammunition is dwindling, and the crews realize this. They begin to conserve every shell, using pressure and a show of force. Sometimes, simply driving into a square is enough to disperse the crowd. The roar of an engine, the rotation of a turret, and resistance vanishes. Panic grips not only the soldiers but the locals as well. People flee, unsure of what to flee from. There is no army, no leaders, no plan. There are only machines that cannot be stopped by conventional means. Julius Caesar attempts to organize a last line of defense. He gathers his remaining cohorts at the central forum. It's a symbolic step: if they fall in the heart of Rome. Thousands of soldiers line up, ready to die. Tanks enter the square and stop. A few seconds of silence. Then, fire. The square erupts in chaos. Statues fall, columns collapse, the formation disappears. This is not a battle, but a one-sided annihilation. History is literally erased by explosions. After a few hours, resistance ceases. Isolated groups of soldiers still try to attack, but they are no longer an army. Tanks control key points in the city. Ammunition is running low, fuel is limited, but the task is accomplished. Rome fell not because of betrayal or weakness, but because of a 2,000-year technological gap. Where tactics and discipline once decided, the level of development now decides. This is a lesson that cannot be forgotten. The most terrifying thing for the Romans is not destruction, but realization. They understand that there is no answer to such an enemy. Neither courage, nor numbers, nor walls work. Tanks are not perceived as men or beasts. They are something else. Panic gives way to submission. The city freezes. Even in victory, the crews understand, they are in a world that can neither replicate nor stop them. And this makes their power truly absolute. In a dry view, a platoon of T-90Ms destroyed an army of tens of thousands. Tank losses were minimal, mostly technical damage. But the main effect is psychological. Even if Rome had the same number of soldiers left, they would not have gone into battle. The legend of the invincible legions dies in a single day. The history of Europe is changed forever. Rome is no longer the center of the world, but a warning that technology decides the fate of empires. But tanks have their limits. No refueling, no repairs, no spare parts. In days or weeks, the vehicles will stop. However, that is enough. Rome is already broken. Even one such battle rewrites all subsequent history. Caesar becomes witness to the end of an era. He lost not to a commander, but to the future. And this defeat cannot be reversed by any reforms or new legions. The most important lesson isn't the victory of tanks. It's the vulnerability of any army if it falls behind in time. Even the best tactics are useless against weapons you're unprepared for. The Romans did everything right by their standards. But it wasn't enough. The technological gap turned numerical superiority into an illusion. And this is true even today. This scenario shows that war isn't just about soldiers and courage. It's primarily about tools. A single platoon of modern technology can change the fate of civilization. And if such a clash were to occur in reality, the ancient world would collapse in a matter of years. Not because of human weakness, but because of the power of progress, which leaves no chance for the past. And here's the main question: if a few tanks could destroy the greatest army of antiquity, what awaits modern armies if they one day encounter the technologies of the future? Rome's history teaches us one thing: superiority is never eternal. Today you're at the top, and tomorrow you're faced with something you're unprepared for. And then numbers no longer matter.